Before today's video, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on the latest videos. If you want to see a case or topic covered by Paranormally Listed, then go to criminallylisted.com and fill out the questionnaire under the Suggest a Case tab. Number 3. St. Mary's Stadium, Southampton, UK. There's no place in the world that has more rituals, superstitions, and traditions than the sports world. Fans, players, and coaches alike have routines, beliefs, and practices that coincide with every game, whether it's a loss or a victory. So it should come as no surprise that there are sports stadiums in the world with their own ghostly lore. The St. Mary's Stadium in Southampton, UK is the stadium for the Southampton Football Club. Since we're a North American-based channel, we'll refer to football as soccer. St. Mary's Stadium wasn't the first stadium built for the Southampton FC. The Dell Stadium was their home for 103 years of the team's existence. They only moved to St. Mary's Stadium in 2001. The stadium's name came from the church of the same name that can be found nearby. The team had originally been founded by the church all those years ago. So you think moving the team closer to the church would be a major win for the team, but it seemed to only ever end up in losses, and lots of them. It wasn't only losses, but also supernatural activity, like people seeing shadows and hearing voices in the stadium at night. However, with the team suddenly being unable to win after they moved, many theories began to emerge to explain away the string of bad luck, because it couldn't be the players, right? One theory is that the Portsmouth FC, their main rival, buried their shirt under the stadium while it was being constructed. In doing so, they basically cursed the team. It's a good story. It's simple, good guys versus bad guys, but is that really what's going on here? If you ask paranormal researcher Andrew Furringhouse, what's buried underneath the stadium is much more significant than his shirt, and has been there much longer. The stadium was built on an ancient graveyard. The settlement that once existed there was the Anglo-Saxon settlement of Hamwick, which takes us back all the way to the 7th century. While the stadium was being built, human remains and graves were found. To deal with the ghosts who may be haunting the Southampton FC and who are apparently quite unhappy that their sacred site had been desecrated for yet another sports stadium, the team hired Sardwin Dragon O'Connolly, who is a pagan witch and archaeologist. According to Connolly, she did the following. I performed a ritual there, and because of my upbringings, I did it in Welsh. I did a cleansing of the ground in Celtic tradition, but athletes are a very superstitious bunch, and I did a blessing as some positive energy, and it obviously worked. Now when Connolly says it obviously worked, she's just not being arrogant. Literally only hours after her clearing, Southampton FC beat Charlton 1-0. And of course, this event was met with t-shirts that stated, "First win, I was there." So it seems that the fans are convinced and the team is assured that whoever was upset is either gone or made happy by Connolly's clearing. However, Furringhouse is less sure than the rest of them. He said regarding the spirits, if you're a spirit and really upset about what happened, it doesn't matter what somebody does. You're not going to go. So, to place a curse here, which is what people believe had happened, then obviously you feel very strongly about it, and you're not going to give up just by someone coming and saying, "Please, can you go?" He has a point. Why haunt an area for centuries? Just up and leave. Furringhouse said that there are still reports of some paranormal occurrences, but since the team's losing streak was broken, everyone is happy. Maybe the spirits have decided to play nice for a while. Either way, the team and the fans are certainly happy with the outcome. Number 2. Frontier Field, Rochester, New York. Moving from the UK to the US, let's take a look at a stadium for a sport that is considered the national pastime, baseball. Frontier Field, found in Rochester, New York, is a minor league park for the Rochester Red Wings and is considered the world's first certified haunted sports arena. This is quite the title, so let's see what's occurred to garner such a label. Some people have seen lights go on in the suites without anyone being present to turn them on. Others have witnessed televisions randomly turning on out of nowhere. Other people have seen floating heads and other entities that seem to be suspended in the air. Photographs have ectoplasm on them, which is unexplained mist in the air. Some people who have experienced these strange occurrences include the team's manager, Don Mason, the clubhouse manager, Kevin Johnson, and even the head groundskeeper, Gene Bonomo. Mason had an ominous experience of seeing thousands of crows in January and February 2021. Since crows are an omen of death, he found it especially upsetting. Bonomo says that he doesn't even believe in ghosts, but he never leaves alone since seeing a dark shadow and hearing noises coming from the storage room. Johnson said he carried a baseball bat with him when he walked around the stadium one night after he experienced hearing noises in the freight elevator. So, what is happening here? Well, when the stadium was being built in 1996, they found bones in the ground. The stadium was built on what used to be a warehouse and an old school in the 1900s. They intended to use the warehouse as part of the ballpark, but it burned down during the construction, which maybe should have been seen as a sign right there. They even found shoes and books. There was also a paper company that was destroyed to build the stadium. Some people have even claimed to see the janitor from the paper company wandering around the hallways of the stadium. According to the director of Rochester Paranormal Investigations, Jake Burkhardt, and a psychic medium named Cindy Lee, many ghosts reside in the stadium. They reported meeting many ghosts on the field when they were on the premises. While some ghosts were antagonistic and malicious, some were very kind. They said kind words about the stadium. They said they loved it there, and some were baseball fans who were excited that they would be able to watch the games for free. So it seems that ghosts are still present and aren't going anywhere, and some are even cheering the team from the stands, or in the air, or wherever ghosts like to hang out. Number 1. Wrigley Field, Chicago, Illinois. If you're not a baseball fan, you may know our next stadium because of a little cameo in the 1986 film Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where Ferris stops to take in a baseball game. If you're a baseball fan, you'll know it as the home stadium for the Chicago Cubs. It is Wrigley Field in Chicago, Illinois. However, the stadium wasn't always known as Wrigley Field. When it opened in 1914, it was known as Wickham Field, named for Charles Wickham. Wickham was the owner of the Chicago Whales. It doesn't matter if you know baseball, you've probably never heard of the Whales. It was part of the now non-existent Federal League. The Federal League wasn't around for very long, and neither were the Whales. Wickham and 9 investors purchased the Chicago Cubs in 1916 and moved them to Wickham Park, which they renamed Cubs Park. Then, in 1920, chewing gum magnate William Wrigley purchased a controlling interest in the team. In 1926, the stadium became Wrigley Field. The problem was that after the Cubs moved to what is now known as Wrigley Field, they stopped winning the World Series. Now, we don't know if this was a similar case to St. Mary's Stadium, but moving the team seemed to have caused them to suffer major losses. And another incident in 1945 seemed to continue the trend of the curse on the team. During this period in 1945, the team was actually doing really well. The Cubs had made it to the World Series, and they were playing the Detroit Tigers. It was Game 4 of a possible 7 games. The Cubs had won the first 3 games. All they had to do was win one more game, and they would claim their first World Series since 1908. Their 37-year World Series drought would be over. Perhaps the excitement around the Cubs' potential win is why a local tavern owner decided to go to the game. William Cyanis, the owner of the Billy Goat Tavern, decided to bring his mascot and pet goat, Murphy, to the game. Now, there are 2 versions of the story of what occurred next. In one version, William and Murphy were admitted to the stadium, but people were upset with the goat's presence, specifically due to his foul odor. William was kicked out, and as he was leaving, he yelled, "Them Cubs, they ain't gonna win no more." In the second version of this story, William and Murphy weren't allowed to enter the stadium. Nevertheless, in both cases, William was unhappy. The Cubs lost the fourth game that night and ultimately didn't win the World Series, and the drought continued for decades. They didn't even make it to the World Series for over half a century. Many believe that William and the Goat somehow cursed the stadium. There were many attempts to break the curse that included having William Cyanis return in 1969. He died in 1970. They tried it again in 1973, 1984, 1994, and 1998 with William's nephew, Sam, and one of Goat Murphy's descendants. The crowd applauded when they entered, but it seemed that nothing worked. In 2007, someone tried the opposite approach and hung a butchered goat outside the field with a sign that read, "Go Cubs Go." That didn't work either, and it was also disturbing. It appears that the curse finally went away in 2016. The Cubs won their first World Series in 108 years. Apart from the curses, the field has had its fair share of ghosts. These include Charles Grimm, the first baseman who joined the team in 1925 and became manager in 1932, Steve Goodman, who was a major fan of the Cubs and a singer-songwriter, as well as Harry Carey, who was a sportscaster who worked at Wrigley Field for 16 years. Graham has often been seen walking around the hallway or heard whispering people's names. Night security guards have even claimed he calls the bullpen phones they think he's calling to advise on pitching changes. There are many good reasons why Graham is seen around. His ashes are interred in a private box on the field. Maybe he couldn't leave even if he wanted to. On the other hand, Goodwin wasn't a player, just an avid and well-known fan. He wrote the song "Go Cubs Go," which is played following each home game. He passed away in 1984 and asked that his ashes be spread on Wrigley Field, and the team obliged. Since that was his wish, it's no wonder he chose to stick around the field in his afterlife. People see his ghostly presence often sitting in the stands behind home plate, cheering on his team as he did during his life. Finally, Harry Carey was a well-known sportscaster on radio and television. His career spanned over 50 years. He died in 1998, and it seemed like working at Wrigley Field for the last 16 years of his career had an impact, because he doesn't want to seem to leave either. People see his ghost still sitting in the press box or in the stands. Sometimes people hear someone yell, "Holy cow!" when the Cubs hit one out of the park, which is something Carey did during the games. It seems that these three men seem to have a love of the game that transcends their deaths, and they still love the Cubs, no matter how cursed they are. These three stadiums illustrate how fanatically sports fans support their teams and want them to succeed. If anything brings them down, they will get a witch to do a clearing, invite a goat to a field, or welcome paranormal investigators to understand what's happening. They'll do anything not to blame the team themselves. It's really quite beautiful. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. If you did find it interesting, please make sure you subscribe. We'll have a new video about the paranormal every week. If you just discovered this channel, please make sure you check out our other channel, Criminally Listed. We have over 325 videos featuring bizarre but true crime stories. You can find it at youtube.com/criminallylisted. We also have a podcast about cold cases that were eventually solved called Criminally Listed Presents Into the Killing. You can find it on Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, and anywhere you find great podcasts. But that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.